In 2013, The Hollywood Reporter asked Amy Poehler if Saturday Night Live deserved criticism for the show's lack of cast diversity. At the time, there were no black women on SNL, although Sashir Zamata was hired in early 2014, bringing the total number of cast members of color to 4. Poehler responded, quote, "Ugh, I don't want to talk about this. Pass." Underrepresentation is a huge problem in the comedy community, but often people with privilege turn a blind eye. Even smaller comedy communities, like the one at UNC Chapel Hill, struggle with inclusivity. Generally, cis-hetero white men dominate the stage. Recently, groups have begun branching out to create their own space for stand-up. With a look at new comedy groups and programs on campus, I'm Mary Amos, reporting with Madison Bonavita. This is Put Your Hands Together.
Act 1. A Straight White Boys Club. Before senior Shay Stanley entered UNC as a first year, the comedy climate on campus was homogenous to say the least. In 2014, False Prophets, a major comedy group on campus, had only 2 women on a team of 7 and 1 person of color. Shay auditioned in 2015, gaining a spot her freshman year.
I did stand-up once in high school, kind of like a talent show type thing, but then otherwise I hadn't done it before coming to college. And then auditioned for False Prophets because I went to their improv workshop. And then part of the audition is you have to do stand-up, so then I did that.
While she says she feels that the gender ratio of the group has definitely improved over her 4 years there, and she didn't feel uncomfortable during her audition, having a majority male group did lend to some gendered situations. Back to Shay.
We had an issue with, a lot of women on the troupe getting told we had, too many feminist stand-ups, in a show, or my one friend did a stand-up about periods that was really funny, and there was a really horrible day where she was just told she was being really preachy, and it really sucked, because it's, your friends that you love that generally are good with these types of things, but when you get a lot of men agreeing with each other, it just gets worse and worse and worse.
In the next 2 acts, we'll speak with seniors Shay and Nani about the groups and programs they have created during their time here at UNC. I Just Said That, the Here Festival, and Creatives of Color.
Act 2. I Love You, But I Just Said That. Seeing a need for a more inclusive space for female performers, Shay began the group We the Ladies, hosting workshops and putting on shows to help women hone sketch writing and stand-up performances. The show costs $5 to attend, which is collected for a specific cause each show.
So it kind of started out of the idea of doing a charity show, just more generally for comedy. And we had done one where it was False Prophets and Chips did a group show, but they didn't really, nobody came. So I was thinking about it next year and what it would entice people to come, and then separately had the idea of creating an all-female, non-binary, non-man group and kind of wanted to combine those ideas, mostly because I feel like men a lot of the times naturally have the confidence to think that they're funny even when they're not, which is what I said to the Daily Dial the other day, and I was looking at the comments. I made so many old men angry. It was really funny.
Recently, the group changed their name from We the Ladies to I Just Said That, working to incorporate femme, gender nonconforming, and non-binary performers.
When we first named it We the Ladies, we didn't really want to name it We the Ladies. It's a very funny name, but we kind of knew from the start we wanted to include people that didn't necessarily call themselves ladies. But I think we were just so overwhelmed with just the creating of a new group and all the other things that we were just we need to decide a name so we can start advertising, or else this isn't going to exist. And then once we kind of had a base of and kind of knew how everything worked, we were we have the time to be more thoughtful about this name and make sure people feel comfortable. And I Just Said That was something that we had talked about before, where it just feels like a lot of times in groups or in meetings, if a woman or a non-binary person says something, sometimes it's not taken seriously until a cis man nearby repeats it louder and worse, which was a joke we had in Province for a while, where it was a real problem we had. Just truly my friends that I love that will just say my exact point but take 10 more minutes to say it and worse, and you're right, I love you, I just said that.
Now in her senior year, Shay has seen the growth of I Just Said That.
Really, our first show, I expected like 30 people to come, and we had like 100, and it's been about 100 every show, which is an incredible turnout for a comedy show in a bar. Like, that's just unheard of. And I think it comes from a place of people just like wanting to support, and obviously there's like a lot of change going on and people not knowing how to best support people, and like it's pretty easy just to show up to a comedy show and pay $5 for a cause. So that's been great. And then as far as performers, we've gotten more and more people as like the group gets traction and people know what it is. And a lot of our new performers this time joined because they had seen the show last time and was like, that's really cool. I feel like I could do that.
Their most recent performance had a full house for her last ever show with the group.
Said that boss baby bitch show. If you're in the wrong class, please leave now. We decided to name the show Boss Baby Bitch because those are the 3 genders.
The show also served as the first event for Shay's thesis project, a festival promoting underrepresented groups in the arts and comedy, titled Here. And focusing on Here, why is like representation in the comedy or arts important as an issue to you?
It's just, I love jokes. I love movies. It feels so good to watch a movie and be like, yeah, I went through that, which I think is pretty universal. And you don't have to look like the people on screen to like relate to movies. I don't know, like I've seen many movies about men and I'm like, right, that was beautiful and powerful, but there's a specific way that like seeing yourself on screen is important.
Here not only showcased the ripples of progress that have come from leaders like Shay promoting women in comedy, but also burgeoning groups dedicated to creating space for performers of color.
I just wanted it to be like a varied types of events and not try to like reinvent the wheel and realize that there are already groups on campus doing this. Like Creatives of Color exists and like does programming like this, and just kind of engaging groups that were already there so that the conversation wasn't just like isolated to this one weekend and is kind of on the minds of the people that helped organize it.
Shay's festival included a variety of groups on campus, including both I Just Said That and Comedy in Color, a campus group started by Nani Shemensky.
Act 3, Black Lives Matter. After doing quite some digging on diversity and inclusion statistics, we found breakdowns of UNC's undergraduate enrollment. A staggering 70% of students identified as white, while a mere 8% identify as black.
I go to UNC, and some people kept asking me every now and then, they're like, what's the climate like on campus, like racially? Like, I think I have a little bit of a unique experience as someone like who is ethnically ambiguous, because it's hard for me to like walk out on campus without someone taking a picture of me and putting it in a brochure. It's happened like twice. I made them take down my face from websites before.
Unlike Shay, Nani Shemensky faced a more arduous path in the comedy scene. While the number of women in false prophets steadily increased throughout Nani and Shay's undergraduate career, from just 2 female performers out of 7 to now an overwhelming majority of 6 female performers out of 9, the number of performers of color has remained stagnant, fluctuating between just 1 to 2 people.
Yeah, I mean, so I just kind of looked around the creative spaces here and I just thought, wow, everything that I'm interested in is so white. Like looking at who's involved in it, and I was like, these aren't the people who I feel comfortable kind of telling my story in front of. These aren't people I feel super comfortable working with creatively if they don't get my experience on some level and what I might be going for.
Nani forged her own path outside of profits, starting a stand-up career of her own.
Freshman year, I had like no friends. I had no hobbies. I had a really bad depressive episode. I went and I took talk. I'm like, what am I like good at in life? Like what can I do? What am I good at? And I was like, well, I can be kind of funny. And I was like, if I worked on this and if I like hone this skill, maybe this can be like a thing. And then it's like a stand-up class and I was like, oh shit, I can make people laugh about things that are about my life and things that I thought no one could relate to. Maybe they can't, but if I can get them to listen to me, share that experience, there is some power in that. And it's like I can make people, just like think about topics that they probably haven't spent a ton of time meditating on.
Facing this overwhelmingly white comedy scene on campus, Shemensky created the group Creatives of Color.
I just kind of started talking to people. I was like, hey, if we kind of created this organization, if we created this space, do you think you could benefit from this network? And overwhelmingly, everyone was like, yes. I want to know more people who are also doing creative things, who are of color. And then so it just kind of started from there, and we decided to focus on film, theater, and comedy because those were, spaces that were overwhelmingly white. And I think some of the programming we put on as Creatives of Color has allowed people to feel comfortable performing. A lot of people have felt comfortable performing for the first time. especially through comedy and color. And like the way that we do that is through workshops with people who like look like them, with also like people of color, and just giving them the space to perform, and people who are there for them.
I think white people care more about dogs than racism. Look, all I'm saying, I don't know a lot of white people who will post like a Black Lives Matter bumper sticker on their car. I do know a lot of white people who will post a Black Lives Matter bumper sticker on their car.
Creatives of Color was one of the many groups featured in Shay's festival. When asked what representation meant to her, Szymanski said,
"Representation to me is just kind of seeing yourself in the arts, seeing your story represented, seeing people who look like you. And I think it's important because it gives like your existence a sort of validity. Like you feel as if, like your experiences in this world, they're valid and they matter and you're not alone."
Szymanski credits her success, in part, to mentors of color who gave her opportunities in comedy. She hopes to pass that onwards.
You need that. Like, you need someone to kind of, like, show you the ropes. And that's, a big barrier to entry point for people of color is, you're a white guy, like 10 different white guys like you who could help it tell you, what shows to get on, which ones not to get on, or you go and you do it yourself because you have that unwavering confidence that, like, straight white guys have. But, it does take a little nudge and push for people who don't see anyone who looks like them going up on stage performing. And, like I've noticed that the people who are like kind of thriving the most are the people who have had more guidance.
In looking towards the future, Szymanski hopes to spread creatives of color.
The goal is to get it registered as a 501c3, potentially expand it to other schools, because like I have heard things from people who are, going to different universities and are like, I wish I had a space like this on my campus. It's so white artistically.
The club has also bolstered Szymanski's personal success.
Even though when I came into college, it felt like this kind of job that I had, like just didn't exist. I feel like I've created something for myself here, and in the greater world of like, going out to LA or New York or Atlanta, there are a ton of spaces for like people of color whose like thing is promoting people of color.